Welcome back to a new video. I've done something rather dramatic, and I thought I would tell you all about it. So, one of my goals for this year, reading goals in particular, is that I am doing my very best to read more indie books. Now, this is no surprise, I'm an indie author myself. Many of the books that I have read and loved are indie fantasy. However, my bookshelf is leaning very heavily towards traditional published books, fantasy in particular, and I want to kind of even the odds a bit. There are some indie fantasy books that I have loved that I absolutely want to get on my shelf, and in future I would love to get more indie fantasy in general in my purchasing rotation. Now, one of the ways that people generally buy or support indie authors is through the use of Kindle Unlimited. If you haven't been around the world of Amazon publishing, Kindle Unlimited is a program where an indie author sells their books, their ebooks in particular, specifically and exclusively through Amazon, and then can enter their books into the KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing Select program. And this lets them put their books into a pot, and any reader who subscribes to the Kindle Unlimited program for $11.99 a month, I think it is still, has to then, or has the opportunity to borrow any of those books, read them, return them, read as many as they like in a month, all for that one set subscription fee. It's kind of like if Amazon were a library that you had to pay for. You can borrow the books, read as many as you like, return them, and read something else. You don't ever own these books, you're just borrowing them, and the authors then get paid a percentage, a very, 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 very small percentage of the pot when they calculate how many page reads an author has had in a month, how many people have read their books, borrowed their books, etc. Now, as Amazon has become increasingly questionable, shall we say, in their treatment of indie authors, a lot of them, including myself, have moved away from selling exclusively ebooks through Amazon and would like to sell them in a wider sphere or sell them directly from their own website. So one of the things that I have done this year is pull all of my ebooks from the KDP Select program, the Kindle Unlimited program, and I am putting them on my website to sell directly. I'm going to be selling through Apple Books, through Google Play, through Barnes & Noble, putting them into library systems, etc. And that, I think, in the long term, will mean a wider range of people can then read my books. And also, if you buy directly from me, you actually get the PDF of my book. You can get the EPUB of my book. You can download it forever and put it onto whatever device you want. You cannot pirate it, though, because that's still illegal, still wrong. We don't love that. And I will have a higher percentage of the royalties, and you will have the book directly, and everybody's happy except for Amazon. So, in the process of that, I've been thinking, okay, if I am doing my best to widen the scope of my book sales into places other than just Amazon, what is it, or why is it that I am still subscribed to the Kindle Unlimited program myself as a reader? Now, granted, a good portion of indie authors are still on Amazon, still in the Kindle Unlimited program, and there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people make a significant portion of their book sales, their book profits, from Kindle Unlimited programs, in the fantasy and romance genres specifically. Those two are usually the highest grossing from Kindle Unlimited programs. And that is perfectly fine. If that's where you get your profits, if that's what you need to do to make your book sell, more power to you. You know, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with Amazon's predatory practices, but not with the authors who have to live within this system and work with what they've got. So, as a reader, though, who reads the Kindle Unlimited books, I've had Kindle Unlimited for years now. I've had KU, where I read many, many books a month, and I borrow them and then return them and read something else the next month. It's been vast because I read anywhere from 9 to 15 books in a month on average, and that's pretty normal for me. So having access to KU where I can get a huge number of books for a small cost per month has been very useful. Except I looked at my reading habits for the last year, and because I've been doing so much with trying to read down my TBR, trying to reduce the number of digital books and physical books that I already own and read them or destash them or whatever, I haven't actually used Kindle Unlimited more than a few times this last year. And by a few times, I mean probably 6 or 7 for the entire year. Now, that's kind of interesting. I have a feeling that my reading habits may change slightly this year because I have managed to reduce my TBR significantly. However, I also want to support authors directly as much as possible. I would like to give them the money that I'm using to buy books rather than sending it to Amazon first. Specifically, I want to buy more physical books. And now, hear me out. Financially, buying more physical books than ebooks is silly given how much I read. It's a crazy amount of money. But I tend to reread physical books over and over and over again. Ebooks I will reread occasionally, but I don't reach for my Kindle as much as I would reach for a book on my shelf. When I'm looking for something to read, I tend to go straight to my bookshelf, not to the digital library that I have. So, mentally speaking, reading a physical book for me is considerably more pleasant, I guess, than reading an ebook. There's something about it that just soothes my mind a whole lot more. I tend to get less distracted. I tend to focus a bit more on the actual story itself, the physical, tactile sensation of turning the page, of reading the book. It is much nicer for me. And we're not even going to deal with audiobooks. That's a whole topic for a different video. I love them, but anyways. So I tend to prefer physical books over ebooks, and I have refined my reading tastes in recent years to where I know exactly what it is that I like to read. Occasionally something will surprise me, come out of somewhere else, and I'll say, oh, yeah, I really loved that. And I should read more of things like that, and then I can kind of delve into a new genre and see what happens, go from there. But I'm pretty good at figuring out if I'm going to like a book or not based on the description, the blurb, what other people have said in the review section, although I don't rely on that as much as I do the blurb, or I'll read a sample, the first chapter, so I can usually tell pretty quickly am I going to like a book. And with all of that being said, does it even make sense for me to have Kindle Unlimited if I'm focusing more on physical books, if I am trying to support indie authors directly, if I am more dialed in to my reading habits and reading likes and dislikes? Yeah, I don't think it does. So I have actually I have canceled my subscription. So I will have that $12 a month. I am going to be investing towards books anyways, because it was already being spent on books. And now I am going to go and take that, and I can still get an ebook if I'm interested in the ebook. But more likely I'm going to save it and see if I can't buy a physical book. Something for my shelf that I'm going to read over and over again. You know, if I want to get an ebook, something quick and fun and easy, no problem. I'm happy to spend the $2 or $3 that it takes to buy an ebook, with the knowledge that I have a bunch of books already on my TBR. I have a bunch of books on my digital shelf, my physical shelf. I'm not lacking for books to read. I'm also judging the SPFBO Indie Fantasy Contest this year, so I have about 30 extra books in my catalog that I'm reading anyways. And I can do ARC reading. I can do review reading, although I do that anyways, and I'm not currently taking requests for reviews because I have so many books I want to read. I have found that doing all of those things means that I have access to all sorts of books, all sorts of things that I want to read. I don't really have any worries about running out of books or not having access to certain things, and in this way, I can support the authors directly. I can hopefully buy ebooks directly from them if they are not already, if they're not within the Kindle Unlimited program. But if not, then I can go to Amazon, I can buy the ebook myself, and they're likely to get more money from that purchase than they are from the Kindle Unlimited program these days. Let me tell you, the prices have gone down dramatically, which is part of the reason why I moved my books away myself, because it doesn't make sense anymore financially. So the publishing world is, and remains to be, a mire of difficult choices, trying to figure out what the best method is for distributing a book, or marketing a book, or any of it is really hard. And Amazon remains the 800-pound gorilla. They are the boss. The highest number of books are now sold through Amazon every year, physical and ebooks combined. And that's significant. But their practices towards authors are pretty predatory. They take a high percentage amount in royalties. They aren't great about giving authors choices about tools like the AI, the Ask This Book AI thing that is now ubiquitous across their Kindle apps, which authors, by the way, can't opt out of. And if you happen to use that on any one of my books, the Ask This Book, figure out what's going on, I can almost guarantee that it's going to say something that's not correct. Just with my experience of AI and what it has figured out about my books, I wouldn't trust it as far as I could throw it. So, but they don't give us an option to opt out of things like that. They don't treat their authors wonderfully. The Audible royalty scheme is even worse than the ebook royalty scheme, which is saying something. And, you know, I'm kind of tired of the predatory practices. My goal is to support authors as best I can. And if that means that I no longer borrow a huge number of books every month through the Kindle Unlimited program, which I wasn't using anyways, then I'm okay with that. So that's why I personally am moving away from Kindle Unlimited. If it still makes the best sense for you, if that's the way that you can consume the most books for the lowest cost, perfectly fine. It makes huge amounts of financial sense for people who read a lot of books. I happen to be in the very fortunate position where I can afford to spend a little bit extra and be a little bit more particular about spending my money on physical books, buying ebooks directly from authors, that sort of a thing. So I think it's a privilege, and I think I'm going to use that privilege to support the authors as best I can. It's a complicated world out there. If the best that you can do is to borrow a book from a library or use the Kindle Unlimited program because it's a relatively affordable thing, that's great. Reading is what matters. Reading the books, reviewing the books, supporting the books, talking about the books, that's the best way to support an author. And we want to support the authors. Just perhaps not Amazon quite so much. Anyways, I will leave you to navigate the muddied waters of the book publishing world, and I desperately hope that you have a fantastic day, that you have a large number of books to read that you are really interested in, that you love, and I shall see you next time. Bye.